Welcome along everybody to qualifying hour for the British GT Championship here, our annual visit abroad, and we're back at the Spa-Francorchamps circuit in Belgium. This fabulous ribbon of tarmac, such a fan and driver favourite circuit, always a highlight on the British GT calendar, and we're expecting a thrilling 3-hour race tomorrow, change in format, the first time this race has been run over 3 hours rather than 2, and we expect it to take place in conditions very similar to this. The temperature has not dipped out of the high 20s all day, in fact it's been into the 30s I think at times, just under 29 degrees. The air temperature, but a track temperature getting on for 50 degrees C, is certainly going to present a challenge. Andy McEwen here in the commentary box, James Baldwin alongside me. James, what a venue we have playing host to the championship over the next 2 days.
Absolutely, mate. It's one of the best tracks in the world, everyone knows that, and I think the lap records could tumble this weekend. As you said, the track temp is really high, but yeah, really excited for qualifying tonight. I like that it's later with the sunset, it looks really cool, so should be a good one.
Presents a challenge though to the drivers, particularly heading, I guess, back towards the pit complex, up through Blanchimont into the bus stop. Difficult maybe with the lower sun to spot your apexes and your braking points, but it will be a fascinating set of sessions. 4 sessions, 2 for GT3, 2 for GT4. It's the combined times, remember, from each session that will set the grids, I suppose, one for each class, for tomorrow's 3-hour race. There is the pit lane, and it is starting to get busy. Some teams in slightly more of a hurry than others to get out there. Slowly baking down in the pit lane, I believe, is Bryn Lucas, our roving reporter, who's busy digging out all of these stories throughout the course of qualifying. And I would imagine, Bryn, trying to find a little bit of shade to shelter him.
I was going to say, I'm fairly sedentary at the moment. I'm trying to stay as still as I can because it is absolutely baking down here, as you rightly say. I've come down to 2Cs though, 2Cs Motorsport, because this is really where my eyes are on at the moment. They've had such a tricky 24-hour period with having to replace the car. They got a new car in, I think you might have been saying overnight. The team have been working pretty much around the clock. They've been awake for a very long time. And then earlier on the other car, well, that was stuffed as well. And then they had to fix that one with a new front end and sort some components out too. So they've had to work very, very hard. But if you have a look around here now, you'll see there are no cars in the garage, which means both cars are getting ready for qualifying, and that's mouth-watering, seeing 2 of these cars out on track competing for, let's face it, the championship honours. They're both going for it, aren't they? So it's very, very exciting down here in 2Cs to see no cars. Hopefully cars will be out on the track in just a few moments' time. Back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Bryn. Well, cars are out on the circuit now, just completing their outlaps. There is the number 18 car, so those of you who've been tuning in all season will recognise immediately. It's a different livery on that car because it is a different car altogether. Kevin Say wrote off the original chassis yesterday with that crash at Radion, and the team pulled an all-nighter to get that car fixed. Then the number 42 car tangled with the number 3 Optimum Motorsport McLaren in free practice 1 and gave the team even more work to do. That car, the 42 car, remember, is the championship leading car. They sat out the vast majority of pre-qualifying earlier on today. So the 42 car with the championship lead to try and defend, not really doing so in the perfect way so far this weekend. So this is a replay of what happened to the 42 car, and maybe your first time seeing this, James. A clumsy moment up at Brussels.
Yeah, easily done downhill right-hander, so as soon as you lock the ABS, it's like it just goes straight on, and yeah, the bonnet's up in the air there. Visibility would be poor after an incident like that, but I think he just got it wrong, didn't he? Just went a bit too hot. But yeah.
Well, they've got the car fixed, as you can see, and out in it at the moment is Charles Dawson. It's the AM drivers who take part in this first session for GT3. The pros jump out for session 2, and it is each driver's fastest individual lap time that gets combined to then give us the grid for the race tomorrow. So we will try and keep you abreast of that once we get into the second session, but not the ideal begin to the weekend. We're halfway through the season now, James, and these 2Cs Mercedes have established themselves at the front of the title race, 10 points between 42 and 18. What does that do to a driver's sort of psychological perspective going into a big weekend like this? 3 hours, 37.5 points on the table for a race win, and everything seems to be going wrong.
You're right. I was thinking about this on the way down. The number 42 car, because they had such a strong start, you're either giving pressure or taking pressure in racing, and since the beginning they'll now take pressure. They're the ones to beat. They have the target on their backs, and maybe they're feeling that, maybe they're not. But yeah, it's a championship of attrition as well, and you don't want to be getting involved in incidents like that, just in case, you know, you have too much damage, you miss qualifying. You got to be careful.
Yeah, remember, this is the car that sort of dominated the Donington Park season opener, won that race from pole position. So then they were handed a 25 kilo sort of bit of an extra balanced performance, almost extra 25 kilos in the car to try and slow them down a bit for Silverstone, where they still finished second behind a guest entry, so they picked up maximum points there. It was really Alton Park where it all started to go wrong. They were 9th in race 1 and didn't finish inside the top 10. I think it was after being on the wrong tyres in that wet to dry race in race 2 that really put them on the back foot. So yeah, they're 10 points clear of car 18 coming into this weekend, who are then 8 points clear of Morgan Tilbrook and Marvin Kirchhoefer. And Marvin put in the fastest time in pre-quali earlier on today. The whispers up and down the pit lane are that the McLaren is the car to have this weekend. Do you agree?
From what I've seen, it's either that or the Aston Martin, isn't it? And, you know, different strengths. I've heard the Aston's very quick in a straight line. The McLaren's good in Sector 2 where all the corners are. So maybe in the race, the Aston is the better package. But, you know, tyre wear, the McLaren might be nicer on its tyres. I actually think Tilbrook and Kirchhoefer are the favourites in my eyes going into this weekend. No success penalty. Car looks good. They're the best out of the McLarens so far this season. So that would be my tip. What about yours?
This fence I'm sitting on is awfully comfortable. I have no intention of getting off it, James. Ask me again in 20 minutes' time. I think it's just one of those tracks, isn't it, that can throw up a bit of a surprise. You never quite know what's around the corner. But yeah, the Aston Martins, they've looked strong, and front-engined GT3 cars have always gone well here at Spa. Those long sweeping corners, they get the front tyres into the tarmac, generate a lot of rotation. So maybe this number 7 car could spring a surprise. I genuinely hadn't looked at the timing screen when I gave you that answer, but they are fastest at the moment. The first effort for most of the drivers have come in, and Giacomo Petrobelli fastest by 1.2 seconds over Rob Collard's second quickest. Then the championship leading Mercedes of Charles Dawson is third. They are 4/10 quicker than their teammate Kevin Say in the 18 machine, and the top 5 completed by Simon Orange. That's the other car that could be a tip for pole, because Simon's teammate Marcus Clutton set the fastest time of the day early on this morning in free practice 1. So it is Aston Martin at the moment, from Lamborghini, Mercedes, and the best McLaren, only 5th.
Yeah, and Petrobelli's P1 by 1.2 seconds, so stonking first lap. And what we might see with these track temps, because it's so hot, is lap 1 or 2 will probably be it, because the tyres get to their peak a lot quicker in these temperatures, and then you do your lap like Petrobelli's done, and he's actually going slower on the second lap. So maybe we've already seen the best from the tyres. And
that is bad news if you're Simon Orange, because if you are Simon Orange, you've just had your lap time disallowed for exceeding track limits at Blanchimont. He's not the only one, in fairness. Matt Topham, who is in the number 3 Optimum McLaren this weekend, also having a lap time disallowed. So that's doubly bad, isn't it? You've lost the lap, and for Simon Orange, it was a reasonably quick lap. You've also used the best of your tyres in that first lap, so they're now really under the thumb to try and put a better lap in next time around. Charles Dawson, we're following up the hill. He is putting in a better lap. In fact, most drivers, James, putting in personal best sectors on this second flying lap. The only exception is Petrobelli, so that tells me he used more of the goodness from the tyre early. The others maybe just warming up to the challenge.
Yeah, his tyre warm-up was probably very good. I mean, maybe it comes down to that. You can see Dawson on a good lap, but he's still 3/10 off in Sector 1, 6/10 off come the end of Sector 2. So let's see what the final sector brings.
Across the line he will go. 4th at the moment, Charles Dawson needs 83 thousandths to move 3rd. Well, he does better than that, goes 2nd quickest. But yeah, to your point, James, nearly a full second off the fastest time. Simon Orange, meanwhile, is on an absolute belter of a lap. Personal best Sector 1, outright fastest Sector 2. So Simon Orange, again, clearly hadn't used the best of his tyres on that lap that was disallowed, and he might still have a shot at going to the top of the times. Rob Collard comes out of the chicane and will go from 4th to 4th, stays exactly where he was, gained a 10th but not a position, and Simon Orange goes 2nd quickest. So even with a purple middle sector, James, 8/10 off Petrobelli.
Yeah, big gap. I just saw Collard had a very scruffy final chicane, hence why he lost a lot of time in Sector 3. But looking at the speed traps, that Honda is so quick. It's like 4 kilometres an hour quicker in the speed trap of Sector 1, quicker than any other car. Very interesting.
Yeah, noticed that in pre-quali earlier on today. So in the race, that could be handy, particularly the early exchanges. That car could be a factor. Here is Simon Orange then, 2nd quickest at the moment. Purple middle sector, and James, I would have thought that would count for quite a lot, because it's twice as long as the 1st and 3rd sector. It's basically everything from this point on, Les Combes, all the way around until about Stavelot on the run up towards Blanchimont. So most of the medium to high speed corners are in that middle sector, and that's where the McLarens have been strong all day long.
Yes, and Petrobelli purple sector 1, but I personally think now, because it's so hot, the tyres would have just dropped off. I think sector 2 is, if your tyres have gone off, you'll notice it in sector 2. And sector 2 is a bit weird at Spa now because it got resurfaced in areas last year. Some of it's new tarmac, some of it's old tarmac, so the grip level changes quite a lot throughout that sector. So as you say, that sector's longer than some laps in some tracks, so it's such a long sector to get right. And so far, Simon Orange looks neat and tidy.
Yeah, personal best in the first sector for him, but another purple sector for Petrobelli, as you said. It's that middle sector that will be the test, though, and it's a 1 minute 3.1. So you can see he's now dropped a tenth the wrong side of his own best lap. Simon Orange through the gravel, and that's the worst place to do it, isn't it, James? Because then you're on the accelerator all the way up the hill towards Blanchimont, which is also flat out, even for the AM drivers these days. You don't lift off the loud pedal until around about here, the braking zone just there for the chicane at the end of the lap, and that will have cost Orange time just after he put in another really good middle sector.
I was just going to say, a real shame actually. Hopefully he's not lost too much time, because that was a really good second sector. It looked really neat and tidy. Let's see what the third sector brings. I think that McLaren is lacking a bit of straight line speed, so yeah, there you go.
And he's caught the Honda as well, look, in the final chicane. That won't have helped matters. Let's see what the lap time is. Well, it's good enough for second, even with all of that. And he has, well, gained about 2 and a bit tenths, I think, on his previous best there. So a bad effort for Simon Orange, despite the mistake, despite the traffic at the end of the lap. He will have time, if he wants it, for one more lap, but the checkered flag is now out. So Matt Topham there in the green McLaren, he's the first driver to see the checkered flag, and his session is done. Mark Smith comes through next for Paddock Motorsport, no improvement. Same for Andrew Howard. I didn't expect Andrew Howard to be that far down the order. That car looked rapid in pre-quali in the hands of his teammate Tom Wood. Andrew just not quite able to get the same performance out of the Beach Team Aston Martin, and that car is 12th after the first part of qualifying. Is anybody else improving? Well, Morgan Tilbrook personal best in Sector 1. That's the number 77 Optimum McLaren. And Rob Collard personal best Sector 1. So there are still some good sectors coming in. The question is, can they string that together over a whole lap?
Yeah, and I think going back to the Aston Martin in P1, Petrobelli has done a great job for Johnny Adam. You know, he's given him a 6/10 buffer. That's a huge gap.
So they're down in the pits. We see the 2C's garage as they prepare for the second part of qualifying. So their cars, in the end, Kevin Say the quicker of the two, interestingly. Third quickest, and Charles Dawson was 5th. So championship leader, only 5th quickest in that session. Here is Tilbrook. Oh, in fact, I will change what I've just said, because Kevin Say has moved up to second. Simon Orange, lap time disallowed for track limit at 17A. So that is the bit of Stavelot where we saw him drift wide into the gravel trap, and that meant another lap time, his second of the session, disallowed. So Kevin Say jumps back into second position. That might, though, be about to change again, because Morgan Tilbrook is still pushing on. Personal best in the first sector and in sector 2. This could, if he gets a good final chicane put together here, James, be good enough to go maybe top 3.
Yeah, let's watch the chicane. He missed the curb on the right, which means that the left's going to be a bit tighter than you'd want, but doesn't use all the track on the exit. Let's see the C of the line, 2:17, 2:18.3.
Which is good enough for third, and we also had an improvement for Charles Dawson as well. He moved up ahead of Rob Collard, who gets demoted to 6th, but has improved in the first sector on this lap. Collard will be, I think, the last car to see the checkered flag, because that was Simon Orange bailing. Here is Collard. There was Collard anyway, the reigning champ, who will not be champion this year, that much we do know, because he missed the first round of the championship. So his teammate Hugo Cook is now scoring all of the points for that car, and in the end Collard does not manage to improve. So Giacomo Petrobelli then, quickest James in the first part of qualifying. That for me though is not the headline. The headline is the margin back to second place. When you consider that the next 2/10 of a second actually,
super
from
close,
Say in second back to Collard 6th within 2/10. For Petrobelli to have that sort of margin is a big statement.
Yeah, and you've got, you know, that gap from P2 to P5. You've got a Merc, a McLaren, another McLaren, another Merc, a Lambo. So BOP, when you look at it at that sort of level of the table, looks decent, but then you've got maybe Giacomo's just done an absolute belter on the first lap. And I would say, yeah, the tyres should peak quite early here with these temps, so maybe he's made the most of it. Usually with this Pirelli tyre on the warm-up, you'd go out there and get on it straight away to get the temp in there, but maybe a slow out lap is the way to go. I'm not sure, but let's see what the pros do in session 2.
Well, it was interesting, wasn't it? Because you're right, Petrobelli was straight on in that first lap. The others seemed to build, but never did get all that close to him. So, yeah, he probably is doing it right, isn't he? He certainly was fastest in that session. The Blackthorn Aston Martin tops the session outright, and the Pro-Am element. It was also Aston Martin on top in Silver Cup with the Silver Am, the Beach Dean Aston Martin. So, Petrobelli fastest by 0.7 of a second. Kevin Say second quickest. That's significant from a championship perspective, as is the fact that Morgan Tilbrook was third. Simon Orange fourth, ahead of Charles Dawson, the championship leader, only fifth. Rob Collard was sixth, ahead of his Barwell teammate Alex Martin, but about half a second between them in the end. Richard Neary, eighth position at the moment, with Mark Smith and Matt Topham completing the top 10. Then Duncan Cameron in the Spirit of Race Ferrari, Andrew Howard, Beach Dean Aston Martin, and Ching Chong Ip in the Bridger Motorsport Honda. Quick in a straight line, but not quite able to hook things together through the twisty stuff as they continue, Bridger Motorsport, to develop that fan favourite car. So that's part one of qualifying done. James, what do we think? This is one of the interesting things now about this combined lap time. It actually, in a way, doesn't really matter what Maxi Gertz and Marvin Kirchhoefer and Marcus Clutton can do. They've got to go 0.8 quicker than Johnny Adam. That won't be easy.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I don't see anything apart from a Blackthorn pole, something's gone wrong there, isn't it? But it's very close behind, and in a 3-hour race, qualifying's not the be or end all, especially at Spa, where you can overtake, especially Sector 1, Sector 3. So today's important, but it's not as important as, say, last time out at Alton Park.
That's what every single team in the pit lane will be saying right now, except for Blackthorn.
Yeah.
They will be saying how important it will be to start from pole position. But, you know, we've seen in the past here at Spa, 2 of the last 4 years, I think it is, we've had an accident on the first lap, which has wiped out quite a lot of the midfield element of GT3. So you think about it being a big, wide-open Formula 1 circuit, but that pinch point at La Source is often the cause of drama. And if you're starting at the front of the grid, you should have more chance of avoiding that.
Yeah, you say that though. Last year was the run down to Eau Rouge, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it sort of started at the hairpin, and then but you're right, it really kicked off down the hill, didn't it? But there's nowhere safe at Spa. It's one of those tracks, isn't it?
Yeah, it does bite hard, and I think we saw that with Kevin Say yesterday. You know, Eau Rouge, all you need is a little bit of a wobble, and then you oversteer too much, and bang, you're in the barrier. You're going so quickly through there because it's such a high-speed track, and there's a lot of grip. You can carry a lot of corner speed, but when it goes wrong quite badly.
So there's the Optimum Motorsport team. They're just sort of, I'm going to say chilling out. That's not the right choice of word, is it, on a day like this? But they're looking fairly relaxed as they prepare the car for Marvin Kirchhoefer, who now will be gunning for the lap record, the GT3 qualifying lap record set last year by Tom Gamble in an Optimum Motorsport McLaren 720S, a 2:15.624. Now,
with that lap, by the way, it was half wet. The track was so grippy because they just laid the rubber down before that British GT round. Even despite the fact it was damp in places, they still did such a quick lap. So I don't think we'll be seeing that time beaten today because it's so hot, but let's see.
I'll be very impressed if it does. Right, let's hear from the fastest man in qualifying so far.
Nearly 0.8 of a second up there on that lap. That was a huge lap for you, and an important one with the championship too.
Let's see if it's important for the championship, but it was a good lap. I'm very happy with it. I think we got everything there was to be gotten, so happy with that. When you put together a good lap at Spa, that's always feels good.
Track temperature is really, really high. Are we expecting it to drop a fair bit? Are we expecting Johnny to have any struggles out there? What did you say to him?
I think we adjusted the car for it. Obviously, we struggled in the last session a little bit, but we made the right changes, so thanks to the team, because really they got it spot on, so really good.
You're nearly 30 points behind the championship, so you need a big one. You know that. Are you feeling any pressure, or are you just seeing how it goes after tomorrow?
No, I think both Johnny and I have been around long enough to know that we just got to do what we can. I think we've got a good car. We've got to try and put together a good race. Obviously starts with quali, but then it's a long 3-hour race. Lots of things will happen.
Certainly can't do any better than you've done there. 7/10, nearly 8/10 is a whopping margin to hand over to the big man there, so well done.
Yeah, confident. I think Johnny will do the job.
Well,
thank you.
So Giacomo Petrobelli seeming pretty calm and collected, I think. He should be, really. He's got Johnny Adam to go next. And Johnny, remember, tied with Phil Keane for the most GT3 victories in British GT history, 19 wins apiece. Johnny hasn't won a race, though, for 2 years. The 2023 race at Portimao down in the Algarve, when the 1 year we didn't come to Spa, we went to Portugal instead. Enjoyed similar weather to this, actually, I seem to recall. That was when Johnny Adam last won a race. That was quite a long time, probably the longest dry spell, actually, for Johnny in his career. so far, I know that we're not even halfway through qualifying really, but so far this is looking like one of those weekends where the car's working well, Johnny's always on form, Giacomo's on form as well. Could just happen.
What's that thing called, though? The commentator's curse?
I said nothing.
Yeah,
Let's move on, shall we?
Yeah, it's a long race. But I agree that the variables are in their favour, aren't they?
Yeah.
So let's see. It's a battle between him and Phil Keane for that 20th victory, I'm pretty sure, isn't it? So.
Yes, that's right, in GT3, absolutely. And then in overall wins across all classes, Phil has a couple extra over Johnny. So
That's
Johnny's
right,
looking to try and close that gap as well. 21 wins for Keane, 19 for Johnny Adam, because all of Johnny's 19 wins have been in the GT3 class. Phil has 19 GT3 wins and 2 in the GTC category. So there you go. A little bit of information for the statisticians among you. Right, now we move to qualifying 2. The pro drivers plugged into the cars. They're coming through now to the completion of their out lap, so we're still a couple of minutes away from seeing exactly what sort of pace they've got, and we will add this fastest lap time to the fastest lap time from session 1. So the timing tower on your screen is going to alternate between what it is now, the combined times, the grid essentially, and the individual session times as well, because there is still some pride, certainly amongst the pros, I'm sure, James, of being the fastest pro in this 10-minute qualifying session. Even if your car realistically isn't in the conversation for pole position, the pros are all keeping one very close eye on each other's times, aren't they?
100%, yeah. It's any time you can get out on track, even for the factory drivers, it's another opportunity to show how good you are to other manufacturers or whoever is watching. So they'll be going 100%, and I can't wait to watch that.
Yes, this is always a treat, isn't it? We've got the Spa circuit in beautiful summer sunshine. We've got some of the best GT3 drivers on the planet, and they've got the track to themselves. So this is the number 67 car. This is Marcus Clutton. Now, he has been the fastest driver so far today. He didn't top both sessions earlier on, but he has set the fastest individual lap time, which I think, if memory serves, was a 17 flat, wasn't it? 17.0. Not quite beaten by Marvin Kirchhoefer in pre-qualifying, which granted took place in warmer conditions, but now low fuel, new tyres, clear track. What can he do?
This car's a dark horse. It's just getting stronger and stronger every round. They're really starting to figure out that McLaren at Orange, and I think the drivers as well. I think obviously Clutton's been there from the start, but definitely Simon Orange, from what we've seen at Oulton Park, he's just getting that little bit stronger every time. So come the end of the year, you know, let's see where they end up.
Simon does quite a lot of racing. Began his racing career back in one-make Mazda MX-5 racing, then started racing Ginettas in GT Cup in about 2021, which is where he still does a lot of racing in this car with this team, with Marcus Clutton. So they are a pairing who do a lot of racing together. Much of it may be away from our eyes as far as the British GT community is concerned, but every time you go on track in a competitive situation, you will get better. So yeah, Simon's done his part of the job. He, remember, was 4th quickest in his session, and Marcus Clutton now needs to try and get the job done as well. He's on it, isn't he?
He is. You can see the dirt before Stavolo won it. He had to really jink to the left to get away from that dirt so he didn't get it on his tyres. Obviously, he'd lose grip after that. Purple Sector 2, though, for Clutton, sort of backing up the theory that the McLaren is strong in Sector 2. When I raced this car at Spa last year in the 24, it was strong in Sector 2, but in the race, it was a nightmare to overtake anything. So let's see how tomorrow pans out for the McLarens. But yeah, and to try and overhaul that Aston Martin already for pole is going to be tough.
Fastest lap so far is 17.3 for Tom Wood. That is already old news. It's a 16.1 for Callum McLeod in the number 3 car. That's the first serious benchmark. Will we get into the 15s with Clutton, though? There's a chance of it, isn't there, across the line? No, 7/10 off in the end. So Marcus Clutton perhaps also still building to the challenge. Kirchhoefer's done the fastest middle sector of anybody. And fastest in the first sector was actually the NSX, wasn't it? The number 86 machine of Jay Bridger, fastest of anyone in Sector 1. That run out of Radion up the Kemmel Straight, favouring the Honda straight line performance. Here, though, comes Kirchhoefer. Look at that middle sector time, a 101.228. Oh. Is it going to be a fastest time of the session for car 77? He hammers the curve through the final chicane, accelerates to the timing line. This should go to the top of this session,
wow,
which it does, a 15.692. He's half a tenth away from the lap record, but that's fastest in the session. It is fastest in combined times, but Johnny Adam yet to set a time, so that's not that relevant until we see what Johnny's got.
Very true. I did not expect to see a mid-15, though, I'm not going to lie. I thought we'd see low 16s, but wow, that's some lap. I mean, you're right, though, that Aston is quick, so let's see what Johnny Adam can do. Well,
he's personal best, obviously, in the first 2 sectors because it's his first lap. He's not set any outright fastest times. He goes 3rd quickest in the session, which is good enough for pole by a 1/10 of a second, though. So a 7/10 of a second advantage that this car had at the end of session 1 is down to only 1/10 of a second. But can Kirchhoefer go any quicker now? Surely he's had the best of the Pirelli rubber.
Yeah, he's gone yellow sector 1 on this second lap, but maybe he could be having a cool down lap before going again with these temps. So let's see.
I'll be honest, I didn't think it was going to be this close. So
it's a yellow sector 1 as well.
Yeah, so not improving in the first sector at the moment. But yeah, I didn't expect it to be quite that close after session 1. I'll be honest, we're right on board with Johnny Adam into Lake-On, James.
Yeah, he looks... it would have been great to stay on board there. Sector 2 so good at Spa, but you can see the Aston hammer in the curves. Well, we're back on board now, and you can see going through Lake-On, preparing the final right. Going to let the car run wide on the exit using all the track. The Aston looks so calm behind the wheel. When you compare it to, say, a mid-engine McLaren or Ferrari, where they're fighting the wheel a bit more, the Aston, the Mercedes, the front-engine cars just look so... not easy, that's the wrong word. They're not easy to drive, but just a lot calmer, and through No Name looked nice, running on the gravel a little bit on the exit, ploughing down to Pouon, a really high speed left, and it's easy to be a bit impatient through Pouon and get on power too early, and then you understeer wide, but he's kept it nice and tight, so that looked neat and tidy. Green first sector as well, so he could extend that overall aggregate pole gap to Kirchhoefer by quite a margin actually if he hooks this lap up.
Yeah, still Kirchhoefer second then. Clutton, by the way, has just improved to third on the grid, went fractionally quick enough to move ahead of Maximilian Gertz in the number 18 car. What a 42. Well, Jewiss hasn't yet set a lap time in this session, interestingly. Jewiss, the championship leading car, remember, has not set a time in this session. He's on at the moment his second flying lap. So the first one, he's bailed out. In fact, it's been disallowed. That's what it is. It was disallowed for exceeding track limits at Blanchimont. This corner that we're heading to now with Johnny Adam.
Yeah, and the seat, definitely going to be flat through there, you know, in these conditions in quali trim, but going into the final chicane, and let's see how much curb this Aston Martin takes on the right, because it's so important to really open up the chicane by doing that. Didn't take as much as Kirchhoefer, and interestingly, you know, the McLaren's not renowned for taking too much curb, so maybe Marvin finding a bit of lap time as a driver by just a lot of curb usage, but yeah, PB for Adam, 16.2. 2:16.2,
yeah, so that's his best. It's third quickest in the session, and it took another nearly 2/10 actually out of the 77 McLaren. Right, here is the 18 2Cs Mercedes, and that is fifth quickest for Maximilian Gertz. Back to third on the grid now, 14 thousandths quicker on combined times than the number 67 McLaren. Here's Jewiss. Right, this is his second attempt at a lap. His first one was disallowed for track limits. I confess I didn't actually see where he was before that lap time was disallowed, but now he comes through and goes up the order, but only slightly 10th quickest in the session. Right now, James, the championship leading car would be 6th on the grid, right in the middle where things can go wrong.
It's worth saying with this car though, because they've got that 25 kilos categorization penalty round here.
True.
It's a massive penalty, you know, 25 kilos round here is probably half a second at least, if not more, 6-7 tenths, so it's massive.
Kirchhoefer still pushing on, but not improving in the first sector over that little patch of dust that was put down after one of the support races earlier on. That shouldn't affect their entry into Stavolo too much though. And Marvin Kirchhoefer, well, it's not, by the looks of it, quite going to be a new lap record in GT3, which I'm sure he'll be a little bit disappointed by. And it's not quite going to be pole position either, it would seem. He's not improving on this lap. Still running reasonably well. What are you learning at this point, James, then? Because the pro drivers probably by now will know they're not likely to go any quicker. He is still pushing on, though. Oh, well, as I say, that has backed out of it. But you do see them sometimes keep going right until the checkered flag. You can still learn something that might be valuable tomorrow.
True, yes. I think he'll box now. I'd be surprised if not. Yeah, there we go. But I think you just don't know how much grip the tyre's got left. There's not like an overlay showing you, right, it's got this amount of grip. So the next lap could be good.
Yeah.
So you're worth just keep going away at it until you run out of grip completely. And back on board with the Honda in Sector 2, clearly where its weakness lies, because in Sector 1 and Sector 3, this car is quick. And but yeah, just lacking a bit of rotation, I suppose, in the corners.
I mean, it's 6 kilometres an hour faster down the Gemmell Straight than anything else out there. That is remarkable. The straight line performance this car has is incredible. And consistently in this part of qualifying, Jay Bridge has been setting purple first sectors. He's just done another one, even late in the session. But look, the car darts into the right-left sequence there at Fania, and just, it doesn't look all that happy, does it, as soon as the wheel's going anything but straight?
Yeah, it looks very unstable. He wasn't using all the track there, not there again at Stavolo 2, not using all the track. So man and machine not in perfect harmony there, I suppose. But because it's so quick on the straight, Eau Rouge in this car will be very tricky, because the quicker you approach Eau Rouge, obviously it's hardest to do it flat, but also if you're lacking a bit of grip in the corners, I wouldn't want to be going through Eau Rouge for 3 hours tomorrow in that car, put it that way.
I'm going to quite enjoy watching it, though, I have to say, because it looks great, it sounds great, and it always looks on edge, doesn't it?
That's a great car, isn't it?
Yeah, fantastic addition to the championship, and I'm really excited to see their rate of progress. You know, there they were on the podium at Alton Park last time out. Yes, they were on the right time when other people perhaps weren't, but still, it was a great feel-good story to take out of the Alton Park doubleheader, and you never know, if something strange happens tomorrow, they could spring another surprise. They will, though, by the looks of it, line up at the tail end of the GT3 grid. That lap in the end was a personal best for Jay Bridger, but they're a second slower on combined times than anybody else. Through comes Marcus Clutton. No late improvement for him, but in the first sector of that lap, he was still going quite quickly, and I think we're pretty much done. So Marvin Kirchhoefer, fastest in Q2, but it would seem, the number 7 Blackthorn Aston Martin that lines up on pole position. It will be Aston Martin from a pair of McLarens, Kirchhoefer and Clutton, and then the number 18 2Cs Mercedes will line up 4th, but that's interesting, isn't it? The top 3 cars in the championship are 42, 18 and 77. They will line up in the reverse order. 77 on the front row, 18 on the second row, 42 on the third row. Right behind each other they will be, but not in the order the championship leaders would like.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? But looking at the pro session in isolation, 3 McLarens in the top 3. So if we assume the pros get the most out of the cars, McLaren do look the strongest on one lap pace, but tomorrow's a different day.
Shout out to Matt Griffin as well. He was 6th quickest in that session in the Spirit of Race Ferrari. So Johnny Adam then sets the 4th fastest time in qualifying 2, which is still good enough by just under 0.3 of a second to put the number 7 Aston Martin on pole position for tomorrow's 3-hour 5th round of the British GT Championship. And what a tantalising prospect that will be. Remember, it won't be the pro drivers who start the race either, it will be the AMP, so it'll be Petrobelli going up against Morgan Tilbrook off the front row when we go racing just after midday tomorrow. So, GT3 qualifying session winds down. Don't go anywhere. We've got GT4 quali to come. Same format, 2 sessions, 2 drivers, combined times. Anything could happen, but it is Aston Martin once again to the fore in GT3, with Blackthorn Aston Martin lining up on provisional pole position and Beach Dean's Aston in the Silver Cup as well. Blackthorn then at the top by just under 0.3 from Optimum's McLaren of Kirchhoefer and Tilbrook, with Clutton and Orange 3rd for Orange Racing by JMH. Then the first 2Cs Mercedes, Gertz and Say, ahead of Hugo Cook and Rob Collard, who were consistent across both of those sessions, but lacked maybe the outright pace in the Barwell Lambo. Then it's the championship leaders, Cian Jewiss and Charles Dawson, ahead of Patrick Cueller and Alex Martin. Callum McLeod and Matt Topham 8th, ahead of the Paddock McLaren 9th and the Team Abba Racing Mercedes in 10th. The Spirit of Race Ferrari will be 11th, despite that late effort there from Matt Griffin. Beach Dean's Aston Martin 12th, and it will be 13th and last for the Bridger Motorsport Honda. And they've still clearly got a little bit of time to find in that car that's new to the championship this year. So, GT3 qualifying here at Spa certainly sprung a couple of surprises, and there were some quick lap times coming in immediately in the first part of qualifying. It was Simon Orange at the wheel of the 67 McLaren. He would eventually be 4th quickest in that session, whilst the number 18 2Cs Mercedes would be 2nd fastest in the hands of Kevin Say. Most drivers went faster on their 3rd or 4th lap of the session, but Giacomo Petrobelli was on it immediately. Well, 2:17.5 was good enough to put that car at the top by 7, nearly 8 tenths at the end of session 1. Then the pros jumped in for session 2, and it all started to change a little bit. Johnny Adam was only 4th quickest in that session, and it was, in the end, Marvin Kirchhoefer fastest in Q2. However, it will be Aston Martin to the fore. Not such a good session in the end for the 97 Aston Martin, the Beach Dean car. They will line up only 12th on the grid, whilst Marcus Clutton charged hard to 3rd provisionally on the grid tomorrow. Marvin Kirchhoefer, fractionally outside the existing qualifying lap record, will line up 2nd, but it will be pole position for Blackthorn Aston Martin's Giacomo Petrobelli and Johnny Adam. So before the GT4 cars head out onto the circuit for their qualifying session, we could head back down to Bryn Lucas in the pit lane, who catches up with Johnny Adam.
Well, when you got in the car, Johnny, you had an 0.8 of a second margin. At the end, Marvin Kirchhoefer really pushed you.
Yeah, Marvin looks fast this weekend, and so does a few of the McLarens. But Giacomo made it a lot easier for me out there. He's stunning lap. We've been fast all weekend, and we seem to dial the car in really well for both qualifying and earlier for the race conditions as well. So it's the team's first pole. Great job by Blackthorn all the way through the season, but especially this weekend. And best place to start for tomorrow. It's a 3-hour race. Anything can happen, but we're starting at the sharp end, so it feels really good.
You've got to start the race tomorrow, Giacomo, so you've got everything around you going on, and you've got a very quick car alongside that we were just talking about there, so it's going to be tough with two different makes alongside each other.
Yeah, we'll try and keep it clean. Obviously, it's a long race, but to start on the right side of the grid actually makes a difference. Hopefully, I don't get sort of pushed like I did at the start at Alton, and also have a clean race and get going.
I haven't even started the race yet. It's not even the same day as the race yet. And I was talking to Giacomo earlier, saying to him, look, you're about 30 points off in the championship, so you need something. At the beginning of the season, you said that the championship was definitely your focus.
Yeah, we've not scored big in a big sort of points and a half score yet. In Silverstone, we got a podium, but we're in the mix, but never executed the points. So yeah, tomorrow's important for us for the championship. Spa's always been good for us as a team and for the car as well. So we're in the right place tomorrow. So hopefully we can pick up good points.
Who knows? Maybe a 20th win. We'll leave it hanging like that. Good luck. Well done, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, if it all goes wrong tomorrow now, we can blame Bryn Lucas, I think. He was the one brave enough to say it to Johnny's face. But yeah, they will be starting well from the front of the field. And Johnny, I think, made a really good point there that it was Giacomo Petrobelli's performance in particular that got them that pole position. It meant that Johnny maybe didn't need to go quite to 100% attack mode in his session, knowing that he could preserve the car and still likely come out on top. So Aston Martin on pole position here at Spa. That is GT3. Now, though, we look ahead to the GT4 qualifying sessions. 2 more sessions to come. And, well, as tight, James, as the GT3 championship is looking, Alton Park really was, I think, a massive turning point in the GT4 championship race, because Mark Warren and Jack Brown for Optimum Motorsport, they were double victors at Alton Park. That in itself, not a complete disaster for everyone else, but the fact that Ravi Ramyeed and Charlie Robertson, their nearest rivals, didn't score a point, in fact, didn't even take part in race 2 after that race 1 shunt for Ramyeed, that is massive advantage Optimum. Yeah,
really what they didn't need, and as a viewer, it's not great to see that because it was such a good fight going into that round. They were level on points, but never say never. It's a big gap. There's still quite a few races left, and anything can happen in British GT. But yeah, that crash was really costly, wasn't it?
It was indeed. Century Motorsport BMW losing any chance at good points. We saw several times earlier this season good points go begging for Mahiki Racing. The eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that these Mahiki Racing cars are Ginettas, not Lotuses. There's been a car change for Mahiki ahead of this weekend, and they're really happy. They were telling me earlier on with the relationship already that they built up with Ginetta. So 3 of these Ginetta G56 GT4 Evos are taking to the track now ahead of their first qualifying session. So outlap here on board with the 84 Mahiki car of Josh Miller, and he's not yet at full speed, is he, James?
No, he's preparing his quali lap. He's going to stay on the rubber as much as he can, stay off the marbles, keep the tyres nice and clean. He's getting the brakes up to temp. Obviously the cars haven't run yet, the GT4, so they would have been stone cold going into this session, and he's starting to now pick up the pace towards the end of this outlap. He hasn't got any traffic to worry about. He's not got to create a gap, and hopefully he's going to line up the last corner to get the maximum amount of speed. Here we go, to start his first flyer.
Yep, straightens up the wheel, plants the right foot, comes across the line then to begin a flying lap. And I'm really interested to see how the Mahiki teams get on over the course of the weekend. So we've spent quite a bit of time, James, in the GT3 sessions riding on board, in particular with the Blackthorn Aston Martin. This is another front-engine GT car, so, similar platform to the Aston Martin. What was that then?
Brake bias. I think he moved it more to the front, yeah, a couple of clicks, so maybe 0.5% of brake bias to the front. Maybe he felt the rear was twitching around on him in turn 1. Oh, big snap actually going up Eau Rouge, but looked comfortably flat there for the Ginetta going up Eau Rouge. And it looks a little bit slower than a GT3, don't get me wrong, but it's only 10-12 seconds a lap, so it's still really quick.
And braking points, I suppose, largely similar, because yes, they've got less downforce, but they're not going quite as quickly at the end of the
And you can see the car just dive onto the front axle, actually. That Ginetta looks quite soft in comparison to the GT3s, which makes sense. The GT4s are softer, but looks aggressive, neat, tidy through Lecum, and another little adjustment there to the brake bias, so clearly still not 100% happy with the brake balance. Going into Brussels, so it's going to V that off, go in nice and hot, get the car turned, get the car over to the right hand side for No Name, which is the left, really tricky corner, no name, because you can't really see it that well, and it comes at you very quickly. So far so good. Sector 2 looks nice. Like you though, I'm very intrigued to see these Ginettas and where they're at pace-wise, because they've not had any running in this season so far. So BOP could be a bit all over the place. They could be really good or really bad.
Well, right now, fastest of anyone in Sector 1 is Josh Miller, so really good, I'd say, so far. Early days in the session, I know. But yeah, interesting to see. But is that normal, would you say, to be tweaking the brake bias quite that often over the course of a lap?
No, well, you try and not do that because it's one more thing to think about, and you should really ideally be focusing on just the driving inputs. But if you're not happy, you've got to do it. And there was a bit of a moment through Piff Path there. So clearly the balance is a little bit rearward, but he's still quick though, isn't he? 2 purples.
Yeah, so the first sector 42.5, no one else in the 42s. Second sector 107.1, no one else doing better than a 108.1 at the moment. So yeah, this car is looking really rapid. They haven't been setting the world alight in the practice sessions, but this a good looking car, a well put together car, a good sounding car as well, with the V8 back underneath the hood of the Ginetta G56s. And let's see what Josh Miller's benchmark lap time is going to be. GT4 lap record, qualifying lap record, 2:31.7. That was set all the way back in 2017. We expected it to be broken last year. It wasn't because qualifying was cancelled. This time around though, well, look at that, a 2:27.493. That is a new lap record.
Just breaks the lap record by 4 seconds.
Is that
as you do? Yeah. So I think the Ginettas have turned up, haven't they? But yeah, the other thing as well these drivers have got to adapt to this weekend, the Mahiki guys, is the Lotus obviously is a mid-engine car. The Ginetta's a front-engine car, so the way you get the most out of that sort of car is completely different. And yeah, it's another thing they've had to adapt to super quickly. You don't get a lot of testing in British GT, do you? They had yesterday, obviously FP1 this morning and the pre-quali, so not a lot of time to get used to that.
Ooh, and he's closed in here on the number 12
nice toe,
Mercedes. Got a nice toe up the hill from Ed McDermott, but now Ed is rather getting in the way. Nothing that he's doing wrong. He's running his own pace, running his own line. He's on a flying lap as well. Doesn't need to get out of the way, but Josh Miller will be furious here because he was another nearly 2/10 up on his own personal best in Sector 1, and now he's having to overtake the Mercedes into Brussels. He does get the move made and moves ahead of the Mercedes, but that will have cost him time.
Yeah, probably purple because of the toe, to be fair.
True.
But still, let's see how these GT4 tyres behave. I mean, yeah, will they be able to last a bit longer than the GT3s? Obviously, we saw Petrobelli in the first session go fastest on the first lap, so you can see Miller there going really wide at Pouon, taking the wet line. And yeah, this is what I was talking about earlier. This is the part of Sector 2 that's the old tarmac, so it's considerably less grippy than the new tarmac we're about to get to in a minute. So just before Stavolo 1, if you look at the tarmac, it gets a lot darker, and that's when you know, right, I've got a lot of grip, and that point is here.
Yeah, you can see it, couldn't you, on the approach into Stavolo, where Ed McDermott picks up the apex quite nicely. Look at the distance that he's lost already to Josh Miller, and look at the time Josh Miller lost in the middle sector, down on the bottom of your screen, 7/10 nearly now off in Sector 2. But you're right, I'll be interested to see how many laps they get out of the tyres on the GT4 cars that don't maybe put quite as much energy into the Pirelli rubber as the GT3s. Maybe therefore the lifespan's a bit longer. That being said, it's such a long lap, nearly 2.5 minutes in a GT4 car. You don't get many bites of the cherry. No. This next lap that he starts will be his final lap of the session, so pressure on in that regard for Josh Miller. That being said, he's still 1.8 seconds quicker than anybody else. The anybody else at the moment headed by Harry George in the Century Motorsport McLaren Artura that is third in the GT4 Championship, with the championship leader Mark Warren only 26 thousandths of a second behind him in third. This car, Ramy, is down in 5th position, but this qualifying session already going better than his qualifying effort did a year ago. Remember, Ramy ended the qualifying session very early in the tyres up at Radeon. That led to a cancellation of GT4 qualifying, hence why that lap record wasn't broken when we expected it to be. Spoke to Ravi this morning. He's still feeling a little bit sore from his shunt that he had at Alton Park. So remember, he was leading the class, went into the barriers at Island Bend and did a lot of damage to the Century BMW that couldn't then race in race 2. But good to see Ravi more or less back to full fitness. And I think potentially here, James, about to improve upon 5th place.
Yeah, let's see. A 2:29, possibly 2:29.4. Not bad, not bad. I think, as you said, because of the shunt at Alton and then Spa last year as well, confidence naturally will probably be lower than usual. So I think today is definitely about get that confidence back up, build yourself back into the championship. It was going so well at the start of the year, and we're on board with Warren. Let's see what he can do. Can he beat Ramy? with a low 29 potentially.
Well, he is at the moment, nearly a tenth and a half quicker than him anyway, now 2.5 tenths quicker, so over a tenth gained there for Mark Warren. And remember, it's these combined times again that we're interested in. So Harry George, 1.4 seconds now adrift of Josh Miller. And remember, they're both silver-graded drivers as well, because it's a slightly different format in GT4 than in GT3, where the majority of teams are made up of a gold or platinum pro driver and a bronze-graded AM driver. Well, in GT4, far more of these Silver Cup entrants, so two drivers of a similar level of experience, ability and speed. They do have to serve extra time in the pit lane, carry extra weight in the races, etc. But right now, the silver drivers to the fore against the AMs, the likes of Mark Warren and Ramy. That could all change though in session 2.
Yes, and we were talking about it off air. Miller and Mitchell as a pairing, a silver pairing, is a very good pairing. Just knowing both drivers and their ability, you know, they're going to be ones to watch this weekend. You know, obviously with the Lotuses, there was the whole reliability issue thing. That's out the window now. The Ginettas hopefully will be more reliable, and they should be, you know, up there.
Well, they should have won a couple of races already
100%.
This year, really. Certainly Silverstone, the 84 car in particular at Silverstone was dominant, wasn't it, until it had its issues. So they'll really be looking to put that behind them this weekend. Ramy pushing on. Personal best Sector 1. Not the only one, actually. Harry George has done a PB in Sector 1 too. So these tyres are lasting pretty well, and that's giving the drivers multiple opportunities to try and put a good lap together. We will get them through fairly shortly. I think Ramy is ahead of Harry George on the track. Josh Miller, though, is already in the pit lane, so he's been and gone and is fairly confident that his time won't be beaten. The question is, how close can the others get? Because that makes driver number 2's job that little bit easier, especially for the likes of this Century crew, because Ramy knows he'll be handing over to pro driver Charlie Robertson in session 2, who should, in theory, have a pace advantage over the Silvers. So if he can maybe find an extra few tenths here, that puts them right back in contention in Q2. Let's see what he does. Middle sector is not brilliant, it must be said, for Ramy. A couple of mistakes creeping in maybe. He crosses the line and goes third. So actually that was a fair chunk gain. Still 1.5 seconds off the fastest time. But that was an improvement nonetheless. Harry George, a bit more consistent though, James.
Yes, I think as you said earlier, we'll see the second session be a lot closer. You know, at the minute, 1.4 seconds separating Miller and George. Harry George across the line though, and he makes it slightly closer, 1.3 seconds now. So, yeah, so both GT3 and GT4 use these tyres, and I think the reason we're seeing GT4 being able to go longer into the session, they're just putting less energy through those tyres. They're not going as quick, they're not as good under braking, not putting as much horsepower through the rears, and that's why we're seeing maybe some lap times improving at the end.
Interesting stuff. So, Ginetta, McLaren, BMW, the top 3 in GT4. The other Ginettas, interestingly, 7th and 9th respectively. But remember, they are both Pro-Am entries, so they're quicker driver yet to come in session 2, whereas Josh Miller and Jack Mitchell, as we've documented, they're in the Silver Cup. So, two drivers who are fairly evenly matched. Ed McDermott here is not on a lap. He's seen the checkered flag. Chris Solkel, the only one who hasn't seen that checkered flag, but I don't think he's improving on this lap. No, he's backed right out of it. So Josh Miller then fastest in Q3, the first part of qualifying for GT4, and we'll watch with interest now to see how that car gets on in the second part of qualifying, and whether we perhaps are going to have another situation like we had in GT3 where it gets an awful lot closer in session number 2. But the nearest Pro-Am runner, so the nearest pro driver in essence, who's going to be getting into the car for the next session, nearly 1.6 seconds back. Yeah,
I think we have seen that for the majority of the year, to be fair.
Right.
But I know this is a completely irrelevant bit of information, but I love the fact there's 5 lap times on there that have beaten the lap record.
Yes. No, that's
the lap record was 8 years ago now. Wow.
8 years, yeah.
But yeah.
No, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, what was it? It was a 31.7. 31.7 this weekend would have put you only 6th on the grid. So, yeah, good point, well made, James. Top 5 all underneath that quali lap record pace. Race lap record, of course, still stands for now, but there's a very good chance that won't be the case after the 3-hour race tomorrow. So, cars returned back to the teams, driver changes, tyre changes, bit of refuelling perhaps to be done, and then they'll be sent back out again for the final part of qualifying. Whilst they're making those adjustments, let's take a look at the results. Century Motorsport fastest in Pro-Am, Team Parker Racing fastest in the Endurance Cup. They're the only Endurance Cup entrant this weekend, but it was Mahiki Racing's Josh Miller who set the fastest time outright, and was of course therefore the quickest of the Silver Cup entrants, with Jack Mitchell to jump into the car for Q2. So, yeah, that's a fairly potent pairing, I think it's fair to be said. And they are 1.3 seconds up the road after the first part of GT4 qualifying. Will that be the case after part 2? Well, we've only got a couple of minutes to find out. The fast lane's open in the pit lane, so cars are being ushered out of their pit boxes into the end of the pit lane and ready to be released onto the circuit, which has not had a cloud above it all day. It's been a picture-perfect day. A lot of people here as well today, and this is only the qualifying day. It's quite a big, it's the start of the speed weeks, of course, this, with the Spa-Francorchamps coming in a week's time, and already fans starting to pile into the campsites. Mahiki Racing then quickest in GT4 so far in the hands of Josh Miller, 1.3 seconds quicker than Harry George's Optimum Motorsport McLaren, and Ramy putting the ghosts of that crash from a year ago behind him to set the third fastest time, but the best of the AM drivers. Mark Warren was about 10th and a half or so behind him, with Chris Salkeld 5th for Century. Then it was John Curry, Stephen Lake, Ed McDermott and Ian Duggan to complete the 9 GT4 runners. Right, let's hear from Mahiki Racing, shall we, by heading to the pit lane to greet Bryn Lucas.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed. Josh, just having a little chat there about that time. It looked absolutely mega. 1.3 up on Harry George.
Honestly, I can't believe it, to be honest. Like, what a car, what a team. Like, what a way to kickstart all this. New car, literally we got it on Friday. Shook it down basically on paid practice. And yeah, what a result. I can't wait to see what Jack does now. But
you said to me earlier on as well that you've got to learn how to drive with an engine where it is.
yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously I drove another front engine car in this series as well as other GT4 series. So I'm sort of familiar with the fundamentals of it, but obviously I was getting very familiar with the car that we've been racing at the start of this year. So sort of going back to how it was, whilst there is some muscle memory there, for sure takes some getting used to.
1.3 seconds to us looks absolutely insanely up on the others around. What can your teammate do? Because you've got a fair bit of work to do tomorrow with the silver pairing, the fact you've got the extra time in the pit lane.
Well, yeah, for sure. I think everyone gets a little bit excited, especially in this first session. Like, if you look at me at Silverstone, we were slightly down the road, but as soon as you get to that pro session in Q4, everything sort of levels out. So I think for sure there's going to be some people beating that time in this next session.
You won't know this reference, but in the words of Michael Winner, calm down, dear. There you go, Andy, calm down.
Yes, I'd love to say I'm not quite old enough to get that reference either, Bryn, but that would be a lie. Right, final part of qualifying coming up then, the GT4 Session 2. Pro drivers about to head out onto the circuit. And there was Josh Miller, hard at work behind the wheel of Mahiki Racing shiny new Ginetta G56, one of 3 shiny new Ginetta G56s for the team this weekend. And the other 2 actually now have a real opportunity to take a starring role in the final part of qualifying because their pro drivers will be put into the cars. So car 88 will have Joe Wheeler jumping in and Blake Anglis getting in to the 69 machine. But can any of them beat car 84 to the GT4 pole? Well, that is the question. There is one of the cars that will be hoping to have half a chance, Charlie Robertson, who is getting married later this year. So congratulations in advance, Charlie. The terrace up at the end of the pit building is as busy as ever. It's a very popular spot for people to meet, particularly at this time of the day. The sun's starting to come down and it's a nice temperature to be sat outside with a drink of your choice and one of the best views in motorsport over the final chicane. So the session gets underway. They've got the outlap still to be conducted. What do we think then, James? 1.3 seconds the margin for the 84 car. Pro drivers coming in now that should be able to go a bit quicker than that. 1.3 seconds quicker then?
Like the GT3 session with the Aston, the Blackthorn Aston, I can't see that gap being bridged, to be honest. It's too big. But you never know. One thing I was going to comment on, though, was the sun getting quite low in the driver's vision now, especially where they're coming down to Pouon, coming up to Stavelot 2, even the final chicane to an extent. Could play a factor, could lead to a few more mistakes. But yeah, I've just realised as well, next week, 76 GT3s going around here at one go. That's going to be crazy, isn't it?
Yes, the Spa 24 Hours coming up in a week's time. And as I began to say earlier on, this is really the precursor to that. It was something that SRO brought in a few years ago to put the British GT Spa weekend a week ahead of the 24-hour event to make it what they call Spa Speed Weeks. And it's been really, really popular. Like I said, the campsites dotted around the circuit already filling up with people who are clearly planning on being here for the next 2 weeks in their entirety. So,
and a lot of the drivers obviously are using this
well.
week in a way, obviously for their own British GT campaigns, but obviously as a warm-up for next week as well. So yeah, a lot of laps at Spa for a few drivers, definitely.
Indeed so. So we look forward to that event in a week's time. And this weekend, things like the French GT Championship and French Touring Car Championship here supporting as well. So it's a big weekend. As I said, lots of fans filing into the circuit. And we're very, very happy to have their support. Right then, we've got 8.25 minutes to go. Outlaps still ongoing. There's the 14 BMW. So that's the car then, one of the cars I think that should be quite competitive in this part of qualifying. Brandon Templeton jumping on board. Chris Salkel having conducted first part of GT4 qualifying. There aren't that many GT4 cars, and yet most of them seem to have found each other here. You'd think with only 9 cars on track and a fairly long lap, 4.5 miles worth of the Spa circuit to play with, they'd look for clean air. Do you think maybe this is a deliberate ploy to try and get a tow?
I've always found here that dirty air outweighs the tow. So you want to, yes, the tow's good in Sector 1 and Sector 3, but you lose so much in Sector 2, it's just overall not worth it. Unless you've got an ideal Sector 1 tow, he gets out of the way for Sector 2 and you get another tow for Sector 3, but how unlikely is that?
Yeah, absolutely so. Well, we'll see how this pans out then, shall we, for Brandon Templeton, who turns the number 14 BMW, Harriet's Chariot, into the right-hander at La Source, and as the BMW plunges downhill past the pits, is the beginning of what they hope will be a fairly quick lap. So the fastest lap so far then was, what, a 2:27.493. That's the lap record to aim for, and there are a couple of pros in this session who will have their eyes on that, I suspect, up towards Les Combes. And the BMW, to be fair, not really closing in too much on the 84 Ginetta, and of all the cars to have in front of it, the one that was 1.3 seconds up the road in Q1 is not a bad one. No,
yeah, and the number 84's got the perfect position on track, hasn't he? Just Mitchell getting clean air and just being able to put his first lap in, hopefully with no mistakes. But I don't actually know, because I've not seen the speed traps, but I'm guessing the BMW versus the Ginetta's strong in Sector 2 and the BMW is strong in Sector 1, Sector 3. I'm not 100% sure. Let's confirm that in this session. But yeah, so far so good for the 84.
Well, yeah, fastest of anyone in Sector 1, and by, well, they were a tenth quicker, just over a tenth quicker than Charlie Robertson's BMW, which we've not yet seen. But yeah, Jack Mitchell then quickest of anybody in the first part of the lap, but faster in the speed trap, the BMW, by about 3 kbh. So that's an interesting little nugget of information. There's the Charlie Robertson time. We're comparing it to the Ginetta, looking so light on its feet as it turns through the right-left sequence down into Stavelot. And well, that is the other Century Motorsport BMW, but it is the number 71 car that perhaps is going to pose a little bit more of a threat. Neat and tidy out of Stavelot, up and over the curb, and it's a purple middle sector as well for Jack Mitchell. 1.5 seconds quicker than Brandon Templeton, but I'm intrigued to see how that compares to Robertson in a few moments' time.
It's great to watch the Ginetta versus the BMW. The Ginetta looks so much more alive, doesn't it? It dives onto the front axle under braking. It's like moving around on the rear during the corners. And the BMW just looks so subdued, doesn't it? But yeah, the Ginetta looks really fun to drive, actually.
Robertson was, what was that, 107.1, 6/10 slower than Mitchell through the middle sector. So Jack Mitchell is proving pretty tough to beat here, it's got to be said. Out of the final chicane he comes. Is this going to be a new lap record then? Well, across the line at 26.4. Not only a new lap record, but a second quicker than his teammate. That is outrageous. Jack Mitchell then, at the moment, 1.7 seconds quicker than the 88 machine. That gap's going to come down though, because it's a good lap this for Robertson. It's not quite Jack Mitchell good, but it should be good enough to go second in the session, I reckon.
Disallowed.
Oh, it's been disallowed, yes. Well spotted. Jack Mitchell's lap time disallowed.
17A.
That's Blanchimont, I think.
The
16A was Stavelot, so I think that's, yeah, the way into Blanchimont. Drivers take that wide line going in, don't they? But they've got to be careful not to go too far. I think they forget sometimes that that is still track limits.
Yeah, and because it's such an easy corner flat out Blanchimont, on new tyres, low fuel, that is, you could say, a bit unnecessary, but I'm sure he's got enough pace to do that sort of lap time again. You know, 27.3 though for Robertson, that's not too far off, you know, and if Mitchell doesn't hook up another lap, he might come to rue that mistake.
Well, that would have been the lap record by a tenth and a bit, had it not. Well, it is actually technically the lap record, because Jack Mitchell's time has been taken away, so it is a lap record for Robertson. But
even though it's 9/10 slower than the previous lap record that just got disallowed.
Yeah, wrap your head around that one, everyone. But Jack Mitchell's the one under the pressure now to try and deliver that sort of lap time again. Right now, then, this car would be on pole position, and Robertson using all of the road out of Les Combes. He is 6/1000ths of a second away from his own personal best Sector 1, and wanted to try and get that time back through Les Combes, but drifted a little bit too wide up the curb. What's Mitchell doing? First sector is okay. It's not brilliant. We'll wait with interest to see what the Ginetta does in sector 2. So it's right now BMW from McLaren, the top 2 on combined times. This is Century Motorsport 71 car, just about 3.5 tenths quicker than the number 17 Optimum McLaren, and another half a second back on combined times to the championship leading car of Jack Brown and Mark Warren. But Jack Mitchell's next lap time, James, is going to be decisive.
Yeah, and it's not as quick as his first one. It's still quick, and he wouldn't have found out about the track limits probably until the end of sector 1.
Yeah.
So he probably thought the lap was all good, unless it was an obvious track limit here. And he's close there, but he keeps the left wheels within the white lines, and that is the rule. You've got to keep all 4 wheels within those white lines. If you go beyond it, that's a track limit. So there's a few key areas, Eau Rouge, Blanchimont, etc. But through the final chicane, looks okay onto the second part, and then he's going to accelerate using all that track on the exit. Had a little bit more to play with, but across the line, 27.1.
Oh, 27.140, and yep, that's quite comfortably good enough for pole position, isn't it? It's nearly a quarter of a second underneath Charlie Robertson's time, and it is 1.8 seconds nearly clear at the top of combined time. So car 84 back to provisional pole. Is Robertson going to improve this time? He crosses the line to improve, yes, by about 1/10 of a second in fairness, a 27.296. It's a good lap time, but it's not good enough to top either the individual lap times or the grid provisionally for tomorrow's race. And I think Charlie's had, even if he improves again, it will only be by 1/10 or a few hundredths, 1.7 seconds back from the 84 Ginetta. That ain't going to be beaten.
You would have thought so, yeah. And Miller said it in his interview after quali. He thought quite a few drivers would beat his time of a 27.4, which is right. And a good reason for that, I suppose, is they fuel the cars up at the start of qualifying for both sessions. So the drivers in the second session have less fuel, which round Spa equates to a fair bit of lap time. So it goes to show, really, that Miller's lap was really good, given the amount of fuel he had on board.
Absolutely, on a well, not a full tank of fuel, but more fuel certainly than Jack Mitchell's had to deal with. So yeah, impressive stuff. Here comes the Seb Morris-driven Team Parker Racing Mercedes that he shares with Ed McDermott. They're the lone Endurance Cup entrant. They're not really worried about that too much. The trophy should be going to them as long as they finish. What they really want to know is where they're going to be stacking up amongst the rest of the GT4 competitors. Well, at the moment, reasonably well, actually. 6th on the grid they would be right now, and Seb Morris comes through to not improve his time and therefore stay 6th on the grid. But 3rd quickest in the session for Seb Morris, who is a really, really quick pro driver, and puts the Mercedes within half a second, or within 7/10 of a second of that Jack Mitchell time.
Yeah, he looked a bit concerned then, Miller, but I think he'll be okay with that gap. What is it, 1.7 seconds? So I don't think he's got anything to worry about.
Yes. No need to chomp those fingernails just yet, is there? I think he's looking good. The time for that will be tomorrow afternoon, because this is the frustration, I suppose, potentially of these 3-hour races. You can put all of this effort in qualifying. You can be the fastest car, but because of all of the toing and froing on strategy over the course of tomorrow afternoon, you never can be assured that that will get you a good result. We're seeing one of the other Ginettas on our screen now, the 69 example. This car 5th quickest in the session, 7th on the grid at the moment in the hands of Blake Anglis. But again, not really seeing any late improvements, are we? In fact, fewer late improvements in this session than we had even in the pro element of GT3. So the pros, or the quicker silvers in GT4, getting more out of the tyre early, and with the exception really of Jack Mitchell and Charlie Robertson, no late improvements coming in.
Yeah, I'm just looking at track limits as well. The key areas really are turn 3, which is Eau Rouge, and then you've got 17A, which is the entry to Blanchimont, and 17 itself, so the exit of Blanchimont. So tomorrow, if you get 4 track limits as a drive-through over 3 hours, that's very easy to accumulate. That's basically 1 an hour. So that could be a key factor for tomorrow's result.
Well, the 71 BMW in pre-qualifying picked up at least 2 2-minute stop-go penalties for exceeding track limits. That's a different set of rules in pre-quali than there is in the race, I admit, but still, drivers will be a little bit mindful of that. Now, speaking of track limits, remember Jack Mitchell had that lap time disallowed early in the session. This is why that lap time was disallowed. James, he's heading towards Blanchimont, and it's not Blanchimont itself, really, is it? It's this bit on the way in.
Yeah, it's hard to see from that angle because you're not parallel with the left wheels. But yeah, the left wheels clearly, it's a judge of fact. So another steward, I suppose, has deemed that off the track. But we need like an external cam, really. But yeah, I have no doubt it was a track limit.
And the next time around, it was not deemed a track limit, and so he was able to then make that lap that lap stand. That was significant because had he done it again or made a mistake or had a problem with the car, they'd have lost pole position because he wouldn't have registered a time. In fact, not only would they have lost pole position, they'd have had to start from the back because you have to register 2 times in each individual session to be classified. So got a bit lucky really that nothing then went wrong. There's Charlie Robertson out of the Century BMW and chuckling away with Ramy. James, your wish, I believe, is our command. You wanted an external shot of the 84 car heading into Blanchimont. I believe we can deliver.
Let's see this. No hiding from the external camera, is there? Let's have a look.
Yep, just there.
Oh, even then, it's hard though next to at an angle. But if they could get a perfectly symmetrical parallel angle, that'd be great.
You can tell you've come from sim racing. You want the aerial view, don't you? Directly down on the car. You want to be able to pause it, freeze frame, zoom in. It doesn't work like that in the real world, James, I'm afraid. That's the best we're going to get. But I'd say it was at least on the line, wasn't it? Which I think is enough to warrant the penalty.
Playing with fire, wasn't he?
Definitely so. Now, in qualifying, OK, fair enough. You might feel you can do that. You want to extract the absolute maximum from the car on that lap. But in the race, you're absolutely spot on. They're going to have to be very careful of track limits. I don't think that's the last time we'll be mentioning track limits over the course of the weekend. So Jack Mitchell puts that track limits debate aside and still manages to set not only the pole position time on combined times, but he was quickest in that session as well, which was good to see. That wasn't the case, remember, for the pole-sitting GT3 Aston Martin of Petrobelli and Johnny Adam. So, yeah, there is Jack Mitchell, who will de-helmet momentarily and presumably have a chat with Bryn Lucas in a few moments' time. So, GT4 qualifying concludes here at a sunny Spa-Francorchamps circuit, and it was Century Motorsport quickest of the Pro-Am cars. The Endurance Cup led once again by Team Parker Racing, but Mahiki Racing's 84 Ginetta, what a brilliant debut that car is making, fastest in both sessions, and they therefore line up on provisional pole position for tomorrow's 5th round of the championship. Jack Mitchell and Jack Miller from the front, followed by the Century Motorsport pairing of Charlie Robertson and Ramy, desperate to put the woes from Alton Park behind them. Then the Optimum number 17 car of Hopkinson and George with the championship leaders Jack Brown and Mark Warren 4th. Century's second car, Brandon Templeton and Chris Salkeld 5th. Then it was Seb Morris and Ed McDermott for Team Parker Racing. The second Mahiki Ginetta of Blake Anglis and Stephen Lake was 7th. Phil Keane and John Curry 8th for Team Parker Racing. And Mahiki Racing's Jack Wheeler and Ian Duggan will be at the back of the GT4 field. So, let's have a word, shall we, with Jack Mitchell, see what he made of that session where he set a new lap record on his way to pole position.
When you come to Spa, you want to put a marker down in the brand new car. I think it's fair to say you've done that.
Definitely, yeah, a little bit unexpected. Obviously, we've been there or thereabouts all weekend, which has been good, but it's a new car to us, and I'm really pleased with the results. Obviously, Ginetta have been amazing. It's been a quick turnaround from being with Lotus to coming with Ginetta. It's a shame to say goodbye to the Lotus, but obviously I know the Ginetta very well, and it's obviously treated us very well here today.
Certainly has. I mean, give us an idea of just how tough it's been for you coming into this, because I don't think the cars arrive until Wednesday or Thursday. Yeah,
it's very late, but the one positive is that I do a lot of coaching, and I coach people in Ginettas, so I kind of know the ins and outs of it quite well, but still the level here is very high, and the results I'm over the moon with. So me and Josh have done a great job, and hopefully tomorrow brings us more luck. So.
You've got a different teammate, as you know, as we all know, this weekend as well, so you carry a slightly different success penalty coming into this one and the way it works, but it's a very good marker. How important was it for you as a driver and you as a team to have something positive going into a race? I know you've had positive starts before, but in this stage?
Yeah, like you've seen from so far this year, we've had really good pace, but sadly the results, we didn't get to the checker flag, but hopefully there's some changes and we can hopefully get to that checker flag in first place. So.
What about the difference between the Ginetta and the Lotus, the way it handles, the way it drives, the fundamental differences?
Definitely a little bit better in the slow speed corners, which you'd always expect, but the Lotus is very strong in the straight line speeds and very good in the high speed corners, so I think it would have been very fast here as well, but either way we're always gunning for pole position, so I'm glad we got it in the end.
Got it, well done.
Thank you. Cheers.
So Jack Mitchell happy, as well he may be, because that was a textbook dominant performance, really, wasn't it? That for both drivers across both sessions to be 1.7 seconds quicker on combined times than anyone else, even on a lap of this length. That is a serious statement that Mahiki Racing have made. They've had speed all year long. That's never been in doubt, particularly car 84. But can they now marry that with a car that's going to last the distance and go and start hunting some silverware? Right then, qualifying done here at Spa. Let's take a look back, shall we, at some of the highlights from the GT4 sessions here this afternoon. So in GT4, Century Motorsport keen to put the Troubles Moulton Park behind them, sent Ramy out first, but in a pretty impressive time. Third quickest in his part of qualifying. There was a drama for the 69 Ginetta, which ran wide at the chicane and had to abort that particular lap. Second quickest in the first part of qualifying, Harry George in the number 17 Optimum Motorsport McLaren, but no one could keep up with Josh Miller. Josh Miller set the fastest time in the first part of qualifying by 1.3 seconds, giving Jack Mitchell a really good chance of converting that to pole in the final part of qualifying. In that second part of qualifying, we didn't really see an awful lot from Jack Brown in the championship leading Optimum McLaren. That car, I'm sure, will be more of a factor tomorrow. Charlie Robertson was flying in the Century BMW, but it was Jack Mitchell who overcame a track limits issue to set the fastest time and take pole. So we look forward then to tomorrow's race for the British GT Championship here at Spa. We'll be kicking off the race at 12:30 tomorrow afternoon. It's going to be a fascinating fifth round of the championship. Make sure you join myself, Andy McEwen, James Baldwin and Bryn Lucas for all the action.